Hey, what's going on, everybody? We are live, Murder Metal Mayhem, doing a little Sunday live with you. I got Michael Addario here, and we are ready to do this. And I hope you guys are ready too. All right, what's going on, everybody? Good to see you all here. We got the people filling in here as we get this thing fired up, and I got Michael Addario here. How you doing, Michael, today over there in sunny California?
I'm doing great, Pete. How are you?
Doing good here, doing good. Starting to get to be summertime. It's a little hot here today. Got the AC going on here at Horns High Studios. But before you guys leave today, make sure you go to Michael's channel. I'm going to pop up a banner as we go into this today. Go subscribe to his channel. He's got some really good content, and the goal is to get him over 1,000 subscribers. He's really close. So let's push him over that and do that for him for coming on to talk to me about this today. Thanks to all the mods of Mayhem and my beautiful wife, Jenny, for keeping those trolls away. You guys know how we are here about that. I don't play any games. And we got AR Hayes supposed to be here as well, the American rebel himself, helping out. So that'll be good. But yeah, we don't want any nonsense in the chat. If you don't have something good to say, then just don't say it. You know, that's what mom always told you, right? But if we get that going on, we'll just put you in a timeout, and that'll be that. But don't forget to like this video. It helps the video get out there, as you guys know. If you're on the replay crew, that's awesome. Drop a comment below. That helps too. And if you're not a subscriber, please do that before you leave today. I really appreciate that. And it's a free way to help the channel grow. And that's, of course, the goal here. Now, this past week, speaking of that, this past week, Michael, I passed 1 million views on the channel, which was definitely crazy when you think about that. You know, 1 million people. That was
Wow, that
really,
that's unbelievable.
yeah, it was crazy to see it. And then just yesterday, I hit 8,000 subscribers. So thank you very much to all of you guys, because that wouldn't be possible without you. And I really appreciate it. And let's go onward to another 1 million views, and let's crush 9,000 on the road to 10,000 and beyond. So I'm up for it if you guys are. Also, we talked about the mods being here in the chat. So we don't want any of that nonsense. I am going to give away 5 free copies of my latest audiobook today for a contest I'm going to do. It's a short story collection that I wrote and I narrated. It's horror, it's suspense, more psychological than gory or anything. If you like Stephen King, Clive Barker, Lovecraft, Poe, that sort of thing, then you'll dig it. And stay tuned for the contest question later on. And you can enter the contest and win one of those copies. You can use it for Audible or Amazon. Now, if you have a question, we've tried some different things here, guys. Lots of questions. If you have one, please, in all caps, put question at the beginning in the chat, and then your question. I'm going to do my best to star those and save them for the times where we answer. But that's the best way to get your question answered. Okay. So please do that if you would. I appreciate it. And just understand, we had some people getting a little irate last week. When we've got almost 700 people in the chat, I mean, we're doing the best that we can. So just appreciate that. Take as many questions as we possibly can. We're going to take a break about every 30 minutes and get into those questions and stuff like that. Please keep in mind, we're going to do our best and do as many of them as we possibly can. And if you want to donate with like a super sticker, you can do that. Not required, but it's appreciated. And Michael and I are going to split that today. So if you send any in, it'll go to the both of us. And I've also got a Cash App available, and that's down in the ticker here as we get this going. So keep an eye out for that if that's your thing. But a roll call of the heads that are behind me, because I get a lot of people ask now. You got Albert Fish, the gray man himself, on my far right, your left. H.H. Holmes in the middle, and none other than Ted Bundy on the far left, your right. So thank you, though, to everybody that asks. I try to rotate around and give you some different looks. And so there you go. And let's have some fun talking about the Idaho 4. I know you guys like this stuff. Michael, your video series is really catching some fire. You got a lot of views on that last one you did. Why don't you kind of tell us, how that all came to be, and you've got this multi-part series. So why don't you give us a little background? And you're a photographer by trade. So how did you get into this?
Well, yes, I'm a photographer, and I do film also. Well, basically a visual artist. So, and I have a series on victims' rights on my YouTube. So I was doing some things about. I do drone work, and this was kind of like a side thing that I felt that I wanted to do. So I did a video about Sharon Tate and Patricia Tate, her at the parole hearing, and then when this came about, I went on to Google Maps, and I was looking around the area, and it was it's a horrible story. These kids are so beautiful, young kids. Look at that picture that Kaylee posted the day of the crime, and she says, what a lucky girl being surrounded by these people. And then that night she would be murdered. I mean, it was just horrible. So I was very curious about this, and what the police said. The narration didn't make any sense. It was a targeted crime. We don't know if the house was targeted. We don't know if the victims were targeted, and we don't know. Um, when asked, they were saying, "Well, we're not going to tell you why we know that. You're going to have to trust us." Well,
Right.
right there, it
Boy.
was something. I had an Israeli boss one time, and he would, when he didn't like something, he would say, "Something smells." So I'd say, something smells there. And so I went down. Um, I went on Google Maps and went down uh, King Road, and I saw the shoes on the wires, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, maybe that means something." But then later on, I saw that we used to do that as kids, but it's also a sign for gang activity or drug activity. But
Right.
so it just caught my eye at first, and then I looked around, and a certain angle as you come in, there is a tree blurred out, and I'm like, why would they blur out a tree? It doesn't make
Right.
any sense,
So
you know.
weird.
Yeah, and then the house is facing Queen Street, uh, but it's actually got a 1122 King Street address, and the place, the entrance onto King Road is that's the only entrance to the whole complex, a vehicle entrance. So all these things kind of perked my interest about it. So I
Mhm.
started digging and digging and digging, and the more and I picked up a lot from a lot of the content creators. Also, I didn't do it all myself. So and then I started researching it more and more, and I had known about the stingrays before, and that was kind of in the back of my head. And also, when I was a teenager, me and my friend went and saw this movie, Blow Up, and it was 1966, right? It was
Right.
about a photographer uh, swinging London mod photographer, has all the models. He's shooting fashion, and he goes into a park and he does a shot of a couple, and then he gets it home and he enlarges it, and he sees something in the background, and it looks like a dead body, and he keeps enlarging it, enlarging it, enlarging it until it becomes nothing but grain. He can't figure out what it is. So that's where I got the name for my film series.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So you actually went to Moscow then and actually, boots on the ground and took a look. What was your vibe when you were there? I mean, what was that like?
Um,
Anything that stuck out to you?
I so I went. I was originally in. I wanted to go to this place called Timber Gulch to do some drone work, and I stopped at this place called Dago Gulch. I don't know where they got this. I think it was Italian immigrants way before, and they called it that. So I thought it was funny, and I filmed there, and I mean, you're in the middle of nowhere. And one thing that happened there that related back later was I lost cell service, but I had GPS service because it was wide open. There was no trees,
Right.
so that can go back to what they're saying about uh, Brian losing the cell service, but still having GPS. Um, so I I came in and I went over to Moscow, Idaho, and I did a drive-through with my GoPro on the hood of my car because everybody that I saw that went in there, they were moving the camera around and they were talking, and it was just I said, well, I'm gonna just put the camera on the hood and just drive and not move it. And I was thinking about going back around and getting a side view, but I didn't have the chance to do that. So what you'll see is me go in uh, and go around, and then towards the back is Linda Lane. You'll see the apartment on the top. That's Linda Lane, and then go around the back of the apartment complex, come down by the 112 King Road, come by the house, and you'll see the tower in the background. And then
Right.
I go out and you'll see that it's very congested. It must be terrible in the snow because there's a lot of apartments. There must be hundreds of people that live in that area,
Right.
yeah, and not a lot of parking. And to
Right.
answer your question, the next day I came back and did some stills, and I wanted to um, try to get a close up of the area where I thought there was either some kind of surveillance. And I was on the sidewalk, and the Uh, and I was getting like a weird vibe. And it wasn't a clear day. It was kind of cloudy. And this guy stopped his truck, a young guy, and he goes, "Oh, you're trespassing." He goes, "If you don't leave, I'm going to call the police." And I said, "Well, I'm on
Hmm.
a public street." He goes, "No, they had put up a sign, a little sign that said no trespassing." So, and I
Ah,
was down from the house. So I said, "Oh, okay," But I didn't want to get into a thing with him. So I just did a couple
sure.
more and then left. So,
Right.
but I didn't get a good vibe about it.
Interesting.
I think Idaho is a beautiful area. The other people were nice, and I, I think um, they're not dumb. They're not going to buy the story,
Right.
so I have faith in them.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Now, I did a video just the other day called Parallel Construction for Dummies because I thought, it might be a good preface to what you and I were going to do today, get a little more into this. And I like to come up with analogies, putting this in context. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, Michael, but I talked about, some cookies in the kitchen. And let's say you got a little brother or a brother, doesn't have to be little, just a brother, and he's stealing cookies and you're getting in trouble because mom's mad at both of you. You're both getting in trouble. So you decide, let's gather some evidence, prove that the brother's doing this. You got the video evidence, but now you're concerned that, you're going to give yourself up as the snitch if you, provide this, because your brother's going to know your parents weren't able to provide any video evidence. So he's going to know. So you arrange this with your dad. You show your dad the video evidence, and your dad works out a deal where the next time they're in the car together, he's going to check his pockets because he's going to tell him there's crumbs all over the back seat all the time. One of you kids is bringing food in the car, and he finds the cookies. And then your brother's busted. He's got the cookies. He's got the goods. Now they turn him in, and he gets in trouble. You didn't get, revealed as the snitch. And there's your parallel construction. Am I off base with that, Michael, or is that pretty decent?
I believe, yeah, I think it is. It's definitely the way it works. I tend to think that the two stops of uh, uh, Brian in Indiana were done that way because
Really?
they had to be tipped off. The FBI had said that they weren't following him. They said
Right.
that a drug interdiction thing, and he got stopped twice for driving too close within 15 minutes of each other. Uh, somehow they were alerted to that, and that's what
Right.
they do. They'll do a stop, and they'll look for something visible, and then they'll do a car search. So yeah, I believe we have to look more deeply into that, and I think um, it goes back into, was there a confidential informant in the house? Uh, you know, were all those noise complaints, were they actually complaints, or somebody said
Right.
there's stuff going on there? Now, I know everybody is um, has a problem with the drug angle, narcotics angle, uh, and you have to look at it that America has been hit. Mostly every family or friends or family has some kind of drug problem in their history.
Right.
It's all over America. So, and Steve is adamant that his kids didn't have anything to do with drugs. They wouldn't have
Right.
been around. But they might have been confidential informants. Somebody could have been a confidential. And matter of fact, Kaylee was working with the police, and so was Brian. Kaylee was working with the police on a missing person. I mean,
Right.
so they might have saw that and thought that she was a confidential informant on something else. So she stuck her neck out for that, and they looked into it, and that could have been why they seemed to focus in on her.
Right. That's a
So
good point. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, so much of this case is just fascinating how it intertwines. The more you look at it, the more rabbit holes you go down. But this is just really fascinating. And I know last week in the chat here, we had a lot of people, which is what prompted me to get a hold of you to do this with me. We had a lot of people in the chat, Michael, that were asking about or bringing up the Stingrays. And, it was, very interesting because I didn't know much about them. And then I started researching and talking to you and stuff and watching your videos, and really interesting. So do you want to kind of explain to the people watching, what are we talking about with these cell site simulators, or Stingrays as they're called?
okay, well, I have to make a disclaimer. I'm not an expert.
Right.
I'm not an expert. So,
You just play
um,
one on TV, right?
yeah, that's right, or the internet. But stingrays, what they do is basically they hijack your phone signal. The police use them to either track people or to listen. And from what I understand, they originally were uh, this. got a big jump after 9/11 and the Iraq War, and
Right.
they wanted to be able to jam uh, cell phone signals because uh, the enemy were using cell phones to detonate bombs. So they not only wanted to find out, to jam that, and to also locate where they were. Now, I just found out that apparently the presidential motorcade also uses them to jam
Interesting.
signals when they go by. And these stingrays, there's been a big problem. They're apparently all over Washington D.C. Listening in, and they're not only done by our government; they're done by all different governments.
Right.
So they can listen in, they can install malware, um, they can uh, do denial of service, where they just shut you down. They can go past encryption. Um, they can turn on the microphone when you don't know it, and we'll get into the symptoms um, later with the PowerPoint. But one of the things that I found out recently was that it can deny you 911 service,
Yeah, that's very interesting.
and, and that's
It's been
what
a
really,
big bone of contention in this case, right?
yeah, that's when it really clicked, because it doesn't make sense why these kids did not call 911. Toddlers call 911,
Right.
and
But how did they contact their friends though? That's the only question I would have is if there were people supposedly there by 8 o'clock in the morning, okay, let's just say that, and I fully believe that these things were in use there, but
mhm,
let's just say that they were, maybe
mhm.
they stopped, early mornings, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, then all of a sudden they were able to get through to people. That would explain at least a few of the hours, but sure as hell wouldn't explain till noon. But I don't know. I mean, it could have possibly been, going into that time. I'm just not sure. But like I said, there were Snapchats going around. I saw these
Mm,
things have a range of like just over a quarter mile. So,
mhm.
depending on how many of them they had. And then I thought it was fascinating, Michael, that they show, that these things could be in planes, drones. I mean, you could do all kinds of stuff with these devices, and some of them are like the size of a cell phone. It's pretty fascinating.
Well, the King Road, the uh, the King Queen intersection is the one where the tree is blurred. I think if
Right.
anything was, that would be a perfect place to put one. Now, if you
Hmm.
go uh, directly across the street to the apartment across the street, they also blurred the address to that apartment, and it looks like a delivery or something that was on the steps. I mean, there's no reason to do that. Now, Google Maps every once in a while will get a weird algorithm and blur nothing, but this was definitely intentional, in my opinion.
Right.
So
Yeah.
uh, it could be that um, they realized something happened. I believe that there was an ongoing investigation and that it went south, it went bad. I mean, everything points to that. The
Hmm.
the you know, what was it, 40 Idaho State Police turn up, 50 FBI agents. They don't usually do that for, I
Right.
mean, we don't have that many agents. So,
Right.
and there was a Quad City task force in play at that
Right.
time. Yeah. So they talked about, what was going on in that area as far as drugs.
Hmm.
And they even said that they found, I don't know if I told you this, a pill press in one of the fraternities. And a lot of people don't. I mean, I didn't know even until recently, so I researched what a pill press is. Pill press is a large machine from China that you put the ingredients in the top, and it presses out a pill, and it looks better than the original, a regular pill. So they
Right.
put fentanyl or something in there, and it pops out a little pill. So, and they can make thousands of these, thousands. And
Right.
and they found it in a fraternity, but they didn't mention what fraternity it was in.
Right.
So
Interesting.
that's a published report in Pullman before the crime happened.
Interesting. And we're going to have pictures here coming up in a minute that Michael took that we're going to show you, and some images, the Google images. You'll see what we're talking about here as we start to roll this out. But one documentary I watched that was talking about these stingrays explained it in an interesting way. The narrator said it was kind of like a game of Marco Polo. You know, the stingray says Marco and your phone says Polo, and that's how they're able to match you up. They got all your billing information. They know who you are. They know who you've called, texts, metadata. I mean, like you said, installing malware. It's pretty crazy what they can do with those things. So saw AR Hayes just rolled in. So, he's a rock star. So he comes in a little fashionably late, but it's all good, AR. Good to see you. But yeah, these things are really interesting. I mean, very contentious with the civil liberties, union, the fact that they're used by US Marshals, FBI, state and local police, and these things are, very, very widespread. Like you said, different governments are using them. It's pretty fascinating. But looks like we've got a fair amount of questions here. I said I was going to stop at about the half-hour mark, so let's get to some of these because it's on our topic here. So I
Mhm.
want to mention, get a few of these up here. So again, if you guys have questions, put question in all caps in the chat, and I'm going to do my best to get them set aside so we can do this. But I do want to say thanks. We got a new member here, Chesnick 1981. So thanks. And got a super sticker from Jackie Bushable. I think that's how you say that. Thank you, Jackie. That's very nice of you. And here we got this one here, Michael. I thought you would like this. Mish
Okay.
Girl says she loved the reference to Blow Up, one of her favorite movies from the 60s. So that's cool. That was kind of fitting. So I thought you would like that.
Yeah.
And this one also, Michael, the geographical vision. Does it look like an area where this type of crime could have happened without people being seen or people being aware? That's a good question. What do you think? With it being so tight, those houses were tight, like you said.
Well, so the police have said that there were two cameras. Well, we know that there were two cameras so far. Linda Lane, which is at the other end of the complex,
Right,
and right at King Queen entrance.
right.
But it's
1112 King Road.
okay, it's facing the intersection. But
Hmm.
then they say they have video of the car pulling into 1122 King, backing up
Right.
and taking. Well, how do they know that? There's no camera there. There's
That's
no.
true.
So uh, they might have. There might be a camera on top of the U of I water tower. That's my suspicion because if you, well, we'll show that later on, but if you go into the right behind the fraternity, you'll see that there's an area that's blurred out, and then if you spin around and look towards the house, it's a straight shot right to the house. So
Right.
you
We
see
got a
it.
good picture of that for
Yeah.
sure. So you guys can see what we're talking about. Here's another one, Michael. Rhonda Stewart. I'm not sure if she's related to Rod Stewart, but Rhonda Stewart says, I was stopped twice within 15 minutes on my way home from Nebraska at about 1:30 a.m. It can happen. So, one by local police in a small town and then outside of town by a sheriff. So, yeah, sure, it could happen, but certainly in this case, with just crazy amounts of coincidence after coincidence after
Yeah.
coincidence, I do think that there was something to that. They were looking for something maybe to see if they could get something visual to pull him over and start going through his car. So I think that's probably right. And here's a good one from a member of the channel, the Richard. He's always got some good comments and questions. But Michael, he says he watched all three of your videos a few times at 7 a.m. Went back to sleep as planned to tell the world about him when I woke up. Come to find out, he made it on others' radar too. So he's surprised that you were here with me. So that's awesome. So you have had a lot of people watching these, and that's really good. I know Harsh mentioned it. That's when I heard about it. I woke up, I think it was last Saturday, and he had done a video overnight. And then I checked my inbox, and you had also emailed me about it. So that was cool. So yeah, that's how I heard about it. And I saw Pavarotti did one, I think on Monday, about Harsh's video. So kind of in a roundabout way, but yeah, it's good to see other people talking about it. That's why I wanted to have you on. So, we do bring attention to this. And if you're watching this on the replay, I'm going to link to Michael's videos in the description. So you can go watch them all, go subscribe to his channel like we were talking about. So very cool. And then here's one from Meanie, says, I've heard they sometimes use jammers during protests so people can't communicate. And that was in one of the documentaries I saw,
Mm-hmm.
Michael, that they do use those. And they showed, I can't remember which, it was one of the police shooting deaths. It was like the funeral for the victim, and they were marching down the street, and there was all this video that they released to, I think it was the FBI or the marshals released this video and said it was just video they were doing to help the police out to keep crowd control. But you wonder, was there one of those Stingrays on, a drone or in that aircraft that was seeing if there were any people that they were looking for in that crowd, right?
Yeah, it could. I don't know if it's always intentional. It could be a fluke with the way it works, and I think 911 sometimes goes to a different carrier. Um, and they talked about in Moscow, Idaho, they were having problems with 911 being overwhelmed,
Right.
um, and then also getting a lot of calls afterwards. So I hope it's not intentional, but maybe you never know. But they
Right.
did that in the standoff of the ranchers too. They complained about that. They said they
Mhm.
didn't have cell service. So
Yeah. It's
it's
interesting.
definitely,
It's
yeah.
interesting. So here's the last one of this group here I've got from Wanda Woman. Law enforcement could have used jammers and the don't worry, I'm here to help. Now that's interesting that she says this because I'm getting ready to do a video, and that's one of the things I'm going to question. Now I'm very skeptical, as most people that are watching this probably are, of the PCA and what the story is that they're trying to feed us. But in the PCA, where Dylan supposedly says she hears somebody say, I'm here to help, what I'm wondering is that could that have possibly been like a second person showing up to help whoever was there doing this? And that's who they were talking to, not one of the victims, but one of the attackers. I'm here to help, or I'm here to help as in I'm the cleanup crew, because we know, these professional hitmen, they'll send in a cleanup crew to where you couldn't even tell anything ever happened. And that's a thing. And so that could possibly, I wondered, when I saw this question, it made me wonder if that could have possibly been what she claimed she heard of somebody being there to help, that they weren't there to help the victims, it was the people doing the crimes. I don't know, what do you think about that?
Well, there's a lot there. Uh, Dylan has a lot to answer for. I mean, if we could sit Dylan down and just
Right.
over this, under oath, he it just doesn't make sense. Her whole narration. Apparently, she wasn't well. The rumor is that she wasn't well believed when she testified at the grand jury, and also the grand jury was brought up in court by the defense that I think half of them said, "Is that all you got?" in indicting Brian. So there's a lot of problems. Even with her testifying, there's a lot of problems. So uh, and and the whole thing with um, them not calling for the 8 hours and then 4 hours after that when the detective officer Payne shows up. That crime scene's been compromised. That's totally compromised. I wouldn't be surprised if Ann Taylor moves to suppress everything. The night
She
she,
should.
yeah, I mean, she said that they're coming. The motion for
Good.
suppression, but she's got to get all of her ducks in a row from the prosecution first to be able to do a suppression. The way I
Right.
understand it. And they're holding off. And getting back to the parallel construction, if they got all this information illegally without a warrant, which is illegal,
Right.
if they're just scooping up information and then using a different narration to go in and to arrest him or to do the check, they can't. That all gets suppressed. Maybe not with Judge Judge. He seems very
Right.
easy prosecution, but definitely it won't go. I doubt very much it'll pass as appeal, and that would be sad if it goes that far because
I
Brian
agree.
will. Yeah, and
I
the
agree.
other thing, a lot of people are saying, well, you're a pro burger, and I'm not. Uh, the problem is if he's in jail and he's innocent, that means the guilty people are still roaming around, and they can do this again, and they got away with it. So we have to make sure we have the right person.
No, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. We got another question from Mary. She wants to know, do the jammers block Bearcat walkie-talkies? I'm not sure. What do you think, Michael? Do you know?
Uh, no, I don't know. I think it just works on cell phones.
Yeah, I
Um,
would tend to think that that's correct. I don't think it would work. I think it's a different, way it communicates. Neither of us, as we said at the beginning, neither of us are experts on this, but we've both done a lot of research, and I feel like I'm pretty up on this after now learning a little bit more, and so I think it was worth us talking about. But I'm not sure, Mary. That is a very good question, but I'm not sure on that.
you've
But
got to talk to Cy Ray.
yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, I've got a PowerPoint presentation that I put together with pictures from Michael, and I want to share that with you so we can take a look at this. So yeah, this is hopefully going to make this a little bit clearer to you guys. So here's the Stingray. This is the one of the types. I mean, Stingray, it's kind of like Xerox. When you say you're going to Xerox something, make a copy. Stingray is somewhat of a generic term that covers this whole, you know, uh, apparatus that does what it does. And this here is like a rack mount, like a back in the bass player days. I found out you're Michael, a fellow bass player. Michael used to have long hair. And if you guys watching can believe this, I used to have hair so long I could tuck it in the back of my pants. I know that you'll find that funny, and I will post some pictures in the community tab this week. I'm not lying. I've got pictures to prove it. I got pictures to prove it. But anyway, this reminds me of my bass amp that went in my rack when I was playing in a band. But that's kind of what this is, it being a big rack with other, audio equipment, power sources and stuff like that. But that's what that's what this thing looks like. And so we've got some, good pictures, but this one, could be, like we said, in a vehicle. It could be mounted in a plane. It could be just about anywhere, and it's mobile, if it's in a vehicle or a plane, and it's pretty fascinating stuff. So what are we looking at here, Michael?
So this is 112 uh, King Road. Before they cleaned out a lot of the shrubbery and trees, this is probably 2000. Oh, uh, could be 2013. This was changed. They did away with the garage on the left-hand side. That came down, um, and they changed the door, and it they did some remodeling after this. But this is how overgrown the area was initially. This all
Yeah.
came down. It was, I mean, it was very like you're driving into a forest. Some of the other photos going down, and you can go on Google Maps and see. You can go back dates like to 2017 and see
That's
like
cool.
going into King Road. I mean, it was like going into like the park, and
Wow.
they just clear cut everything.
Wow. Interesting. Interesting. So let's get to this next one here. So we're looking here at the after, right? The after they cleared all that out.
Yeah. Now this is the
Mhm.
view from 1122 King, the patio, and you can see in the distance that little uh, the pole, the power pole with the transformer on it, and that's where I believe uh, either a pole cam or a Stingray was placed for surveillance.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
it
and
would
like
be a
we were talking before the live, Michael and I were talking that this used to be the front door. So that's why we assume it's got a King Road address because we're looking at King Road. And as
mhm.
we all know, now with the way they've reconfigured this, the front door is the former back door. And so that's why there's the confusion of king and queen. And in a case where there's a judge and, and all these wacky things, they can't even get the site address of where this atrocity happened. So we're left to assume that this is why it's so, is we're looking at the former, what would have been the former front door of this house that faces King Road. So
You can
there
see
you
the
go.
walkway. You can see the walkway that would walk right from uh,
Hmm.
King Road right up into this area.
Right. And I know
And
a lot of people have talked about how good of an athlete Jack Decor was.
mhm,
This right here would lead to that slider that would have led to Kaylee's old room. And there have
mhm.
been plenty of people that have wondered if they use this as a possible exit or entrance. It's certainly possible. But somebody like Jack, an athlete, and half of these people in this story were athletes, could have easily jumped up, grabbed that, and pulled themselves up on that porch. So I'm just saying, now I couldn't have done it. If I would have done it, we'd have been calling 911, and hopefully Dylan wouldn't have the phone, because if that were the case, I'd probably be laying there in the on that concrete pad for 8 or 9 hours. So anyway, I digress, as Harsh would say. What are we looking at here, Michael?
So this is the students, the co-eds, and I mean, one of the things that they're all beautiful. I believe that's Zana on the left lower. I don't know if any of the other ones are there, but if you look behind them, that's the power pole with the transformer that I
Right.
believe. Um, Now you can't see anything in any of the pictures on the Google Maps. I've tried multiple times, but it's like a tree, and then also it seems like a bush that's in between. So it's very camouflaged in that area.
Right. Right. I had to put this up because Justine's a member on the site, the channel, and she says she's in for Jack D. I know she's in other videos I've done thinks that some suspicion there with Jack. So don't know, but
Yeah.
I wanted to throw that in there. And this one is very suspicious. What's this all about, do you think, Michael? I mean, are they pointing to where like the Taco Bell is? Like there's something going on there, or what do you think they're pointing at?
So this is behind the house. You can see Maddie's room, the balcony to Maddie's room. They're pointing over the house. This is law enforcement. Now, I
Right.
believe they're pointing to the University of Idaho tower, because right where they're pointing is the tower, and the
Right.
tower has a clean shot right to the house. And I
Hmm.
also think that there was a camera, at least a camera on the tower. So, and that's probably where they got some of that. If they do, in fact, have the car backing up and going around multiple times, there's only a camera at both ends. So how would they know
Right.
that? You know, so
Right. And I know this area right here where they're standing, Michael, was in a lot of videos I saw, though that's the parking lot to the Queen Road Apartments. And a lot of people suspected that, whoever it was that did this or those that did this parked almost right where they're located here because they would have had a clean shot into that bedroom window and they would have known when the lights went out. But, we've also heard where they're pointing at could also be Sigma Chi. And we know that there's supposedly there was a clean shot. They also, from the other side of the house, could have seen lights going out too. So I don't know.
that's
Maybe they're pointing at Sigma Chi. Maybe somebody just asked, doesn't somebody in this neighborhood have a K-bar knife? And that, they all pointed over there because there was the pictures of the frat boys with the K-bar knives and
yeah.
all of that craziness. So, all right, what do we got here?
So this is coming in on King Road at the King Road uh, King Queen intersection, and I just checked it. So if anybody wants to verify, go on the Google map, and you'll see that this is very strangely blurred out, and it's still like that. But if you go on a different angle, it doesn't blur. So somebody took the time to do this, and people like to have some people like to have their houses blurred out. You can ask them to do that if you're in law enforcement or you're a politician or you just don't want to be bugged with having your house on Google Maps. But for them to do this, and then right across the street they blurred out the address to that apartment.
Right.
And at one time, and they kind of changed it. They actually blurred out the trash in the trash can. It
What
might have
the
been a fluke.
hell?
Yeah,
Their
because
phone bill was sitting on top and they didn't want anybody to see it.
there's a pizza box and there's something else,
That's
but they did
goofy.
on the apartment. They blurred out the address, and they
Mhm.
also, like I said before, they blurred out what was ever on the step. It looked like a package or something. They blurred that out. So,
Interesting. Now, this question came up in the chat. I just saw it and we were just, in the subject. So I thought I'd throw it up there. Meanie asks again, if there was a camera on the tower, would that have been part of the parallel construction that prosecution or law enforcement didn't want to make known? What do you think about that, Michael? I mean, these cameras, is that where you think this is the clandestine part of the investigation that they want to keep secret?
um, I think that's probably a legal question, and probably something that might be, very specific to Idaho law.
True.
It depends. They have cameras all over campus. They might, just they could claim, oh, we were just like scanning and we just saw this and we were doing
Right.
it that. Or if they had an actual, if they were focused in on that. So I'm sure, because Ann Taylor did mention the last time she didn't mention the University of Idaho tower camera, but she mentioned the tower. I don't know if you go back, she did mention a tower that they don't
Interesting.
have all the information from. So
Interesting.
there is also, which hasn't been talked about a lot, um, in Washington State. There is, I want to make sure I get this name right. Um, okay, there's a lab called the Complex Social Interaction Lab. Right? Have you heard of them?
No.
So right across the way from where Brian's office was, they take body cam footage from police departments and they uh, categorize it and they look at how the police interact with the civilian and if there's any kind of
Okay.
bias. So so they get all because they claim that a lot of this police footage is they just come up, put it back, put it in the rack, and I think after 30 days it's done. Nobody ever looks at it if it's nothing big. But this
Right.
lab looked into all this, so they they claim that they weren't doing Moscow PD. They were doing Pullman. But I don't know if they had access to the cameras in the area. So that would be a place that I would also like to find out more about. And they
Yeah.
have videos on YouTube about what they do. So,
Okay. Okay. And here we got the picture. This is the tower, right?
yes, this is the tower, and this is right above the fraternity, the Sigma Chi fraternity. It's right across the
Mhm.
street, and you can see somewhat of the tower in the background. Now, and this is kind of funny because if you go to this area now, they unblurred it. It's not blurred
Really?
anymore. Yeah,
Wow. And
they're,
that's
they're
funny too, because Sigma Chi made a point when that president was interviewed out in front of the frat house when he said there was no cameras on the property when they asked him about that. Here's potentially could have been a camera from at least the backside of it because the house, or was this would have been the front of the house, right? Which way did the house face? Did it
so
face King Road or this or the tower?
well, so there. If you go there now on Google Maps, there's a light post there. So, and if
Okay.
you spin around and look the opposite way, you'll see the frat house, and then you see a straight shot to the 112 to King Road house, the front of it.
Right.
And I think we have that shot, but we have the earlier shot. Okay,
Yeah,
so
here's one picture of it.
yeah, so this is what it looked like in what was it, 2013? Totally overgrown
Right.
in the red circle. If
Right.
you look, if you go there now, uh, the latest pictures before they demolished the house, it's a straight shot right to the house.
Right.
It's very
Interesting.
visible. And these stingrays apparently are affected by foliage, so it breaks up the signal a little bit. So it's better to have a straight shot and be
Sure.
within a
It makes
tree line of it.
sense. It makes
Yeah.
sense.
The same
Whether
with
it be a camera or a stingray, right?
right, right.
So what are we looking at here?
So this is 3 blocks away on Blake Street, and again a blurred tree. Blake and Taylor. It's right off as soon as you turn. And somebody had said, and I haven't been able to confirm it, that uh, possibly Brett Kopaka lived in this area, and that has not been verified. But um, it would be interesting if he lived in this area. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting. But in your video, Michael, when you're driving down Blake Street, I told you it looked like a third world country with all these huge potholes and like garbage
yeah.
all over the place. I was like, my God, looked like
Well,
the Trailer Park Boys or something. It was pretty messed up.
yeah. Well, they were partying. The college kids like to
Oh,
party.
I'm
They
sure.
they have a sofa on the roof of one of the houses. And, yeah, I mean,
Wow.
I can't. I mean, we when I was in high school, we did crazy stuff like that. So
Oh, sure. We were all stupid and young one time, right?
young
And
and
what
dumb.
is what is the yeah, what is this one, Michael?
Oh, I think it's the same one. Maybe I
Oh,
just
okay.
yeah,
Different angle, maybe.
yeah, there's a little bit of it.
This is
So
interesting. Tell us about this picture.
yeah, this is what I did. What I had done on when I was there. Um, it's at King Queen Road. It's the power pole And if you look, I got a, I should have gotten a little sharper. I think I was a little spooked by that guy telling me that I was trespassing. But
Right.
you can see, um, well, what had happened was there was a notice that they were going to tighten the wires at King Queen. They were going to because they were sagging, and I was like, they're not sagging. So I wanted to get there, you know, before they did that, but I didn't. And when I finally got there, the shoes were removed, and it looked like they disconnected something because there in the two red circles, you can see two disconnected wires.
Interesting.
So, um, you know, it could be somebody's cable line, or it could be something a little more, nefarious.
Yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting. And then here we got a good one, an aerial shot. And what is this showing us?
So this is the three places that um, that I believe there was something installed. So you have right in the middle, you have the King Queen house, the
Right,
1122
right there.
King. Uh, Towards the left, that is the King Queen intersection. Then up uh, the left upper, you have the water tower,
Right,
and you see the water tower has a straight shot right into the house.
right.
And then if you go over on the Blake Street, um, with the other, or towards the right, that's where I believe the other one was installed. Well, that's where the blurred tree was. So, and I have found some more, um, but there are areas. There's a house up on the hill that was totally blurred out, and some people said that was on the Bailey's now. So
Huh.
there are more, and there's kind of a walkway that goes up the hill. But the way the house is situated, it's kind of like a little bit in a valley, and I don't know. The one cop had mentioned that the sound would kind of it was like a bowl, and the sound would kind of, you know,
Yes.
if they were having a party, the neighbors would complain. But I don't know. I don't know if that was actually true or not. But
Yeah, I have a hard time understanding in a college town that you would have that many people complaining about in a college neighborhood like this, that you would have that many people complaining about noise. For God's sakes, you're living in like the hub of parties, like I don't understand. It makes no sense. I mean, how many parents with little kids were in this neighborhood? Probably very few. Most of them would have been college kids, and
right,
college kids aren't calling the cops on each other. And
right,
that whole Banfield incident with the 911 call. I know this isn't an episode on the Banfield, but that's what came to mind about the 911 stuff is that 911 call came in at 3:01 according to their records. But yet the cops showed up to Banfield for these three kids walking across Banfield that were supposedly drunk at right before 3 o'clock. So how
mhm,
did the 911 call come in after they already were there when that was why they were supposed to be there was because there was this, drunk three kids, which when you see the video, they don't even look drunk at all. So
true.
that's a different discussion, but that's what made me think of that is it's just very, very strange here with all this, going on and just a lot of
Plus, they
shadiness
said
with this
they were,
police.
they were undercover for alcohol offenses, which is,
Right.
okay, that
Yeah, and
doesn't
they
make
were only there for 20 minutes, so it's like, would they get bored and then they went over and went on another call? But I know I've done an episode on this where we talked about this quite a bit, but it just all this stuff is so intertwined. It's hard to really talk about one thing and not bring up some of the other stuff.
right.
But and then what about this slide here, Michael? This is some symptoms if your phone is being hit with one of these stingrays.
Yeah, so I got this from a YouTube channel, Security Researcher, and he has a whole channel on cell phones and how they can be spies in your pocket basically, and what to do, what not to do, and how do you know that your phone is is under the control of the cell Stingray or a cell site simulator. And they
Right.
say that the phone is warm when not used, rapid battery drain, uh, degraded or no data service, degraded or no voice service, and no 1-1 service. Now, um, he says that's a dead giveaway, dead giveaway, and that's what
Right.
made me put two and two together. That really kind of
Yeah.
pushed, you know. And then the other thing, the last thing is the bad text message address. And he says that because when I found out that text messages went through from a good source, I thought, well, maybe my premise is wrong. But he was saying that the address for the text message tends to be different than what you would normally get from a
Hmm.
person on the other end. So it could be, if we ever got to see uh, Jack D's phone, uh, maybe he didn't know where these messages were coming from and didn't open them up.
Sure. I mean,
That
it's
could,
very possible. It's very
yeah,
possible. It makes me wonder if that's why they were trying to call him 9 times and they couldn't get through to him, or 10 times they couldn't get through to him. Was that really the case, or were they not able to get through because the Stingray was in operation and there was no service there, So definitely makes you wonder. And then this one here on parallel construction, Michael, what did you want to do you want to say anything about this?
well, this is how this comes from uh, the DOJ slideshow that they had to talk to their investigators and what to do. This is originally in Reuters. Reuters found out about this and published it a few years ago. So this has been out there.
Yeah,
And how to change your narrative to hide the fact of where you got the information from. And some of it, I it's a little hard to decipher, because originally, from what I understood, they were to legally allowed to listen in on people that were talking to people overseas or in Mexico or Canada. If it was an international call, they could listen in on it because of the war on terror. But they kind of went out of bounds, and they started listening to everybody, and
right.
then turning that information over. But then they turn it over with a caveat that says, "Okay, well, stop this car, but you can't tell them I told you." So this causes a problem,
Right.
and then the next slide will show they don't want you to tell anybody. This is
Right.
crazy, you
Right.
know, that, and it could be where the prosecution is, they might not know, that the police could have gotten these tips and not told the prosecution
Right.
uh, how they got them. So it says there's something redacted. That's the way I got it. I didn't do that. It can't be revealed or discussed. Uh, People that get the police departments that get these stingrays, they signed an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement that they
Right.
can't talk about, and they can't even say. Most of them won't even say they have one, and and what information. Um, you can't put it in an affidavit. U.S. attorneys or state attorneys, you can't tell them. This
Wow.
is crazy.
That
Court
is
procedure.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when we're talking about this parallel construction in Idaho 4, I mean, there could be all kinds of stuff going on behind the scenes we have absolutely no idea about and probably never will. When you look at this list here, I mean, nobody could find out about any of this stuff. It's really fascinating. And I know
Mhm.
a lot of people watching probably have seen my True Crime Deep Cuts that I did on the investigation where I interviewed an Australian police officer. And I know, Michael, you've talked about, you watched that too. And he weighed in
Right.
on this, and he has a lot of knowledge about parallel construction over there in Australia, and
Oh,
has some knowledge of the Stingray technology and things like that. And so I'm planning on doing true crime deep cuts with Mick again
oh, great.
about this very topic. And so get some good, hands-on practical knowledge that he's got. And I know a lot of people really liked me interviewing him. I'm guessing part of it was the cool Australian accent, but I don't know. He's a great guy. I've interviewed him many times for the Murder Metal Mayhem podcast, but here we got a few more questions I wanted to get to, or another. We hit the hour mark here. We're past the first hour. So I wanted to throw a few questions up here. Here's a good one. Not really a question, but Justine Cooper again weighs in and says, Pete, you must show your long hair one day, maybe the next milestone. I don't think I'm going to make a wait, Juzzy, for that. I'll bust a good one out this week. I promise. In the community tab, you'll see a picture of me with this crazy hair on stage, and you guys will get a kick out of it. So no more day. Those days are long gone, but back in the day, I had some really long hair. All right, here's one. Has anyone checked out a garden tool called Bare Bones? You would be surprised at the damage it could cause. I'm not familiar with that piece, Sloan, but I know that when I did some videos on Eric Gower, the private driver, or at least the person we think is the private driver, his Pinterest page was filled with all kinds of crazy implements like the Bat Shetty, which is just what you think it is, a bat with a machete blade in it.
Oh, wow.
Um, and all these like wicked, like medieval style weaponry on his Pinterest page. And all I could say is if Brian Koberger had a Pinterest page that looked like Eric Gower's Pinterest page, the media would have been going absolutely bonkers. But Eric Gower's wife amazingly works for the Moscow Police Department. She's the
No.
person in charge of the FOIA requests. This is the most incestuous place I've ever heard of. You're brave, Michael, that you and went out and took pictures and video there, because I don't think I'd even want to be in the city limits for fear that one of these fools from that Christ church would grab me and throw me in a van and take me out to the compound and make me do videos for him. Could you guys imagine that? Be doing videos for the Christ church with my heavy metal shirts on? No, maybe not. But anyway. So I'm not sure about that, but it sounds nasty. I definitely don't want to ever hear about it, but it could have been. I mean, I think that they used hatchets, machetes. I did a video that just came out yesterday about Jack D competing in that axe throwing contest the night before in Moscow. There's the Moscow axe throwing business. I want a Moscow axe throwing t-shirt. I went to the website because I want one so bad. And the merch page was down. But I'm telling you, Moscow axe throwing, I'll buy one. You just hit me up and I will get you the money because I need one of those t-shirts in my collection. Sorry. All right, here we got a super sticker from Jamie. Thank you. That's 10 pounds, I think. So she must be from the UK. So thank you, Jamie. And she asked if Brian Koberger is innocent, the police let the real killers get away and tore down the house, giving them a free pass to do it again. But they looked like they took it down because they caught him, in my opinion. So what do you think about that, Michael? We were kind of talking about this earlier.
Yeah, it could be that, they just want to clean up and keep their reputation in stake, but I think this is going to backfire. They everything that they said so far, unless they come up with something, they say they have what 52 terabytes of information. Uh,
Right.
Pretty much everything that they put out there so far, the DNA, the car. and they can't put give all this other information. They can't present it. Uh, this guy, so far, he looks like he's on a walk. Um, they did this before. This happened with Richard Jewell in
Right.
the he was the security guard at the Atlantic Olympic bombings, and he was actually the guy who saved a lot of people. He told them
Right.
about the bombers, and they pinned it on him. Also, as Al Sharpton uh, pinned this uh, thing on Koala Bernie, I think her name was, that these cops had abducted her, kidnapped her, and sexually abused her, and found her in a trash
Tawana
can.
Brawley.
Alana Brola, yeah, and so and then their lives were really put in jeopardy. These cops,
Hmm.
and then they found out that she made it all up. So
Right.
you got to take all this stuff with a grain of salt. I mean, it's really as Reagan used to say, trust but verify.
Right. There you go. There you go. And we got another question here from my email. It says, do you realize what a great service you are doing? That parallel construction is just a cool PC name for what LE has done forever to cover their secrets. And you could get a sober guest. I'm not sure what that means, Michael. You're not drunk here. I don't think what
Not yet.
I'm not sure what this person's talking about there, but parallel
No,
construction is a thing.
yeah, it's been going on for quite some time. Some
Mhm.
it seems like some lawyers are like, what's the big deal about this? We knew about this all along.
Right,
So I don't think the public, the general public, knew about it. It's
right.
been on the internet that where I on both of my two of my films I've used the person, the narration of either a YouTube video, and I credit them, or a newscast or a newspaper, I should say. Tim Johnson was one, and then the other one was I can't remember off the top of my head. But I used them and credit them. Leak Source News, that was the second one. So
Okay.
so I what I'm doing is basically putting a puzzle together. So and I'm able to do that on YouTube as long as I don't monetize it. So, but that is and that one was out. I think it's been out for 10 years about the
Wow.
parallel. It's got maybe 2,000 views. So
Yeah, the
uh,
Thought Riot podcast did a really good episode on this about 6 months ago. So yeah, this is far from anything new. I'm just new to it, but like Lucky said last week when we did the live, is this is something we've kind of talked about already in this case, but we just didn't know there was a name for it.
mhm,
Like when I write books, uh, I have a friends that read my writing and give me feedback, like rough draft feedback, and I just thought that that was something that I did because it made sense to me. And then I read a book that said they're called beta readers. I'm like, well, I've been doing this. I just didn't know there was a name. So I think it's like that with this. I think we've all kind of known that there's stuff going on behind the scenes in some of these cases. I mean, most of us here following true crime know that this stuff happens.
right,
Police use informants all the time. I mean, that's how they do business. So,
right,
and they got to protect them. In Australia, they're numbered so that they're everything in the file is just a number so that
oh,
there's no mention of their name whatsoever in any of the paperwork. They're very, very protected in Australia, which I found very interesting. Here's a question from Sean Marie. Do you think Brian's life is at risk now while he's in jail? Personally, I don't think so because we heard from our friend A.R. Hayes, who was at that jail in Latah County, and he said that there's two cells in the basement where they put people in protective custody that they would go, or somebody in like a solitary confinement situation. There's two cells at opposite ends of the basement, and he's in one of those two cells. So, no, I don't think he's at risk at all. He's certainly not in any kind of general population. I don't think they've got but maybe 8 cells in the whole jail there. That's a very small jail. So I don't know. Do you think he's at any risk, Michael? Anything that you would think?
Well, there's the Jeffrey Epstein thing. So he was in a federal
Sure.
jail. So, but I don't think so. But there's definitely the prosecution and the defense keep putting out that there is a risk. They keep putting that in their motion that there's there's a confidential informant, and there's people at risk. Um, I believe that there's an ongoing investigation that they're not talking about. This is probably the reason for the gag order, also the reason for so many of these closed hearings. There's
Right.
something in the background going on that we don't know about, and they won't tell you. They're not going to advertise that, but
Right.
um, there there was a lot of arrests after this case
Right.
that
That huge bust.
used, but there was also a huge bust before it happened that nobody really talked about, and that involved a kid overdose, 15-year-old kid overdosing in Coeur d'Alene,
Oh,
and
wow.
them coming that's Paley's hometown, and them coming down on this group of young kids that were selling over Snapchat, and that um, they went to court like the beginning of November, and these guys were like in their 20s, right around 20, 21, 19. They got 20 years, 20 years
Sure.
in federal prison. Federal prison
Wow.
has no parole,
Right.
so I
You're
mean,
doing the whole 20.
a horrible, horrible situation all the way around. So they got their issues, and there's I believe it's ongoing, an ongoing investigation. So that's what and there are probably and also the way that the students are acting. I think they're frightened. That's my take on it. That's why they're not out there with pitchforks saying kill my. They Whoever did this wanted to send a message,
Yeah.
and the
Loud and
kids.
clear.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot that we don't know that went on, and um, and they're hiding that at this time.
Yeah, I agree, Michael. I think that those people are scared to death because I don't know what else would make somebody button up like this. I mean, imagine if something like that happened, God forbid, in the neighborhood that you live in, or if I in where I live, the whole town would be talking about this. And if you've got media people walking around, I mean, I'm sure in the early days, I mean, they were all over that town.
Mhm.
They got nobody on camera talking about this at all. I mean, I've never seen any like man on the street, type interviews like you saw with the Gilgo Beach and all those neighbors that were outside going, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened." And then now maybe they did on the local level, but I've never seen any of that stuff. I
There,
didn't follow the case in the very earliest days. I've mentioned this before on the channel. I didn't follow this case until the fall of last year. So I was about 6 months late because I was doing other things. But once I started following, I was watching as much of this I can. I've never seen any of that kind of stuff. I can't believe that you haven't had any locals wanting to sell a story and make a few bucks, but they must
there,
be scared into silence.
there were a few, not like you said, not very many, but I think the biggest telling point was um, they had the vandal alert initially, uh,
Mhm.
shelter in place, and then uh, it was what, an hour or so later. Oh, don't worry about that. Go about your business.
Right. That was strange. I mean, why do the alert and then change it,
I I
an
think
hour
that,
later?
however, I believe there was a message sent. However, this crime was done, there was a message in the crime, and they knew that the kids didn't do it. This is much bigger. And people and the cops that said they have never seen anything like this, veteran cops, the kids all clammed up. Uh, the, there's there's some kind of message that was sent, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
agree. Definitely strange. And I know I've put out my latest theory talking about how many people I think like everybody had some sort of involvement, whether it was a lookout, whether it was a driver, whether it was somebody to make sure somebody was at a certain place at a certain time. This was an orchestrated event. I firmly believe that. There's no way in hell this was some random act by some deranged maniac that happened to walk in that house that night. I'm not believing it. And I think it was some sort of orchestrated thing with multiple players at different levels. And like you said, I mean, if there was somebody trying to send a message, it was certainly loud and clear because all we've heard since this started is absolute silence until here just the other week, Ashland Couch did that interview. Did you see that?
yes, yes.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's interesting.
it, it might have been. Some people are claiming that it was some kind of meeting that got out of control. Um, and maybe people were to scare somebody or to, um, there's another thing that comes up, and it's something that I never heard of uh, that could play in this case. It's called smurfing. Have you ever heard
Hmm,
of it? It,
no.
it's a type of money laundering. That one of the problems with any kind of narcotics trade is they have a lot of cash and they don't know what to do with it. I mean, they know what to do with it, but they don't know how to launder it.
Right.
So they've been taking on people to open up bank accounts and to launder their money, and they would get a percentage of it. So they would put, like if you put more than $10,000, it sends up a red flag. So if you put $9,500 in, and
Right.
500 goes to you, and then the 9,000 goes to somebody else. It's harder to track. And then they do this thing called over invoicing or under invoicing. So you buy something for $9,000 and it's worth $100, but that money goes to whoever sent it to you, and they get the money, and you get the whatever. So
Interesting.
there's this thing called smurfing is something that I just found out about. If you were to go onto the um, Department of Justice attorney press releases, you'll find all these cases that they are in different areas, and most of the ones that I look at are in either Idaho or the um, Western Washington. So I mean,
Interesting.
it's a big issue.
Interesting. Now I know, with this whole Stingray technology, I'm wondering if this is why Brian's phone was offline for a while. And we've heard Steve G said that Kaylee's phone had no signal for a period of time. I don't know if those two jive, but if Brian according to his alibi, was in Washington, I mean, if these things were being done in that whole area, I mean, do you think that those two could have been related if all these people were, you have two people we know of that had no service or were dropping signal? I mean, do you
Well,
think they could have been related to a Stingray operation?
no, they wouldn't have had that range for. Well, there's a lot of ifs. If Brian was in that area, he would have lost service. People have said that that park doesn't have any service, but
Right,
he should still have GPS service if he can see the
right.
satellite. So if Cy Ray is able to bring that out of his
Mhm.
phone, they got a damn good alibi, and he
Oh,
is
yeah.
one unlucky person. I mean, he's a lucky person that
Oh
he
my
had
god.
to go to that park at the same time that a multiple
Right?
Smurf. I
Yeah, I
mean, there.
mean, it's so horrible to think of just somebody getting scooped up and put in prison or jail for now 18 months. By the time the trial comes, it'll be 2 years plus. I mean, that is awful. I mean, if they don't have a case and he walks, I mean, how does that not turn into a criminal act to put a person through all that when you knew damn well you didn't have the evidence? I mean, that's
Well,
the frustrating thing I think a lot of us feel here, is that it's infuriating. I mean, it honestly is, because if Bethany Funk actually has some exculpatory evidence, when the hell are they planning to let people know what that is? Because to me, if that's known, I don't understand why that doesn't come out now, because if they don't have any case against this guy, why in the hell are we playing this charade? I mean, it's very infuriating to me. I don't know. I know it's a little off topic, but it's just frustrating.
well, he might have some uh, intelligence on it. I mean, so this is something that I was thinking about. So if the NSA is looking at all the information, right, that goes through the internet, they tend to do, and they pick up keywords. If they found his survey of "Are you a criminal? When do you think you do?" I mean, that would have been a
Right.
gold for them. So that might
Sure.
have, and he got stopped a couple times. So he might have been on their radar before the crimes happened.
That's what I've heard. Rumor is that he was on their radar for some reason, and that very well could have been with that survey, I guess.
Well, the survey was supposed to be confidential, but if you're the NSA, you can trace that back, and and,
Right.
and it would have been a gold mine. They would have found, I don't know who answered the survey, but it would have
Right.
been perfect for them. And then they could have used parallel construction, right? Went to whoever filled out this survey that they committed this crime, and said, "Oh, it's a parole violation, or we want to look in your house, or this and that," and then start a new narrative. So there's a lot of ways of looking at this. I think the information might only come out in a civil trial. I kind of think that there's going to be. I mean, even Steve G. They already put it out that they want the option to have a civil trial against
Right.
city.
Yeah,
So
kind of like OJ.
yeah, it's going to, yeah. So you'll find out more there.
That's true. That's true. Now we know that there's supposedly like 30 FBI agents in the area, and I do think that that is related to this somehow. And then we were talking about that big Quad Cities, the bust,
Mm.
27 major figures in the narcotics world went down. I mean, that was a huge case. Do you think that all of this stuff ties in together with the Idaho 4, or do you think that was just one of those freak, it happened and it has absolutely nothing to do with this big investigation and all these agents in town?
Well, a little story. When I was a teenager, I broke my leg and I was in the hospital, and I had a semi-private room with a Philadelphia detective, and we got to talking, and I was a teenager, and he was middle-aged guy, and he was in there for a hernia, and I was asking like, well, oh, what case are you? What are you doing? And he goes, I got hundreds of cases. I said, well, isn't it like TV where you start in the beginning and go to the end? And he goes, no, we were dealing with hundreds of cases at the same time. And I go, oh, and
Right,
the experience was watching TV and beginning and end, and the commercials, the credits come on, and
right,
so yeah, so to answer your question, there's probably people know people. They probably use confidential informants. They might flip somebody from one crime and say, well, we don't have a lot of information on, we don't have a lot of evidence on that person. We'll use him and maybe wire him. I mean, we see that with some of the people that have been arrested. They seem like they've done horrible things and
right.
law. So and people have been in the family have been arrested a week before this crime happened. So,
Right.
I don't want to, disparage anybody, but you have
No,
to.
there's some legit concerns. I brought it up. Maddie's stepmom, she got picked up for a heavy narcotics charge. Xana's
Trafficking.
mom, same thing, trafficking.
Yeah,
And then somehow they're able to either walk away or get some pretty light sentences. And
yeah,
that usually leans towards that they were some sort of informant. And that's potentially one of the motives here. If somebody was upset at those two and they were in, some sort of you know, protective custody in jail where they couldn't be gotten to, maybe that's how they did it, was go after their kids. I mean, it's certainly possible. Like you
yeah,
said, I don't want to disparage either, but to me, I mean, some of this stuff, I mean, we tap dance around it. I mean, these kids were, they were human, and we all have faults, and maybe they were doing some bad stuff. And if that is the case and that's what led to their demise, it's terrible. But at the same time, if you're, rock climbing Mount Everest and you fall, I mean, it's terrible, but you were the one climbing the mountain. You know what I mean? So if you want to play that game, then unfortunately you take those kind of risks. And I think too often people are afraid to, say something negative about the family or about these victims, when I mean, I don't want to go out of my way to say something negative, but I'm also not going to not say it because it's some sort of taboo subject. I mean, that's just how I feel about it. We
yeah.
got a few more questions. Go ahead, Michael. I'm sorry.
Well, I really feel for the families. They've lost somebody and they're hurting. Um, but you got to look where it takes you, and if it doesn't come out now, it will probably come out later, and it will probably be worse. So it's better to come out now and get those facts out there.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. We got a couple of people gifted some memberships here. Mercy Cat gifted 10 Murder Metal Mayhem memberships. So awesome. Thank you, Mercy Cat. And that's the membership to the Horns High Club is the club. $2 a month, $1.99. I kept it low. The big perk is you get the episodes as soon as they're done and uploaded, so you don't have to wait. Sometimes I upload a video and it doesn't come out for a couple days. So these guys in the Horns High Club get them right away. And that's the main perk of that. And I'm glad that I can do it. So thank you, Mercy Cat. And then Wendy Nelligan, she gifted a membership as well. So thank you, Wendy. That's awesome. And here we got this question here, or comment from Sandra Sylvester. I know a girl said Hunter Chapin was MIA the day the bodies were found, and a no-show for noon study session. She called and called without an answer until 1:30ish, and he told her Ethan was dead. I don't know any of that. I haven't heard any of that stuff, but there are certainly questions with the Chapins that I have. It's another one of those. It's tough to do because you know that a lot of people aren't going to want to hear it. But my main question is, how in the hell do you send those two kids back to that school after this happened? I mean, that is just very questionable of how you even do that. I don't know how the kids would want to be there, and I don't know how their parents would want them to be there. But at the same time, it could have been a, we're not going to let this ruin our lives kind of
mhm,
thing.
mhm.
So I could see both sides of it, but it is questionable. And it is kind of weird that Hunter was the first recipient of the scholarship and his brother's name. That just seemed kind of strange to me, but it is what it is. But that's interesting. I didn't know that. All right, here, Lisa. I can't pronounce the last name. Sorry, Lisa. The word or the use of parallel construction can, in and of itself, be considered exculpatory evidence. Ann Taylor's working on her way or working in that direction, in her opinion. So, what do you think, Michael?
It it seems to fit the puzzle. It seems to fit what they're trying to do, and they're and she has said the suppression motions are coming. She warned them,
Right.
but I think she wants. So if she does this, I'm not sure how you do the suppression. If you have to do it all in one batch, or you can do it along the way. So I think she
Right.
wants to keep everybody as frustrated as possible with with the prosecution, and say, okay, that's it. We're going to do suppression on all of this, and I, I think people should get ready to see. Uh, I have a feeling that he's going to get released because they really don't have much, unless 52 terabytes. There's something in there that we don't know about.
Yeah, but you of all people know how much space video takes up.
Yeah,
So if they've got like 50 cameras worth of video from that night, my God, I mean that could easily be that much. I know for me, doing the videos I do for YouTube, I had to get an account to store my stuff because I'm running out of space on my laptop. I mean, video takes up a lot of room. So,
yeah, okay,
and of
yeah.
course they like to play the game of taking the video and the audio and scrambling it up. And I mean, that's just messed up. I mean, I don't even know how they get away with that.
Well, that brings another point. I don't know how they got that audio of the thump. They say that they got in the dog barking, but as far as I can tell, there is no ring camera on the back of that house. The only
Right.
ring camera is on the front of the house,
Right.
and that
Right.
camera should see uh, uh, the what was it, the one delivery. They should see the delivery. They should see the girls come being dropped off, unless they were dropped
Yes.
off Taylor. Uh, it's possible they were dropped off a Taylor. The coat there. Uh, the
Right.
coat is strange because Maddie would have not gone out with that coat. That was too big for. Somebody gave her that coat, and it might have been uh, Jack Showalter. Um, but it was left. It looked like it was the same coat that was left on the fire
I
hydrant, where
I agree.
then they could
Well,
have shot right up the path right into the house.
sure. Well, I know that one video I watched said if they would have taken the bus, because a bus runs that late from the grub truck, they would have got dropped off on Taylor, right where you're talking about.
Okay,
But the private driver, Gower, in an interview claims he dropped them off at the house at
okay.
156. And there's that one still shot from that camera you're talking about that shows a white pickup truck, which some have suggested that that was his truck at 156. So that would jive with that. That camera, as you correctly pointed out, is the camera because it shows the intersection of King and Queen Road.
Right.
And there's no other way to get to that house by car other than that road there. So there's no other way out. So if there's, like you said, DoorDash, people getting dropped off, people making 3-point turns and pirouettes and other nonsense they're talking about, it would have been seen on that camera because they would have had to pass it to get to the house. So,
Right.
and it was a good camera. So there'd be decent video of it, but we haven't seen any of that. But to me, that's the video. If they're going to have video, that's the one, because I don't believe any of this other crap. The one that they showed from the gas station leaving town at 3:45. I mean, that had tinted windows and it doesn't match their time frame. It's leaving town at 3:45. I
Mhm.
think it jives with my time frame of this happened like between 10 till 3 and about quarter after. That's when I think it happened. You see the 4 run across the Banfield. To me, that's when it ended. That's when the body cam gets turned off. And to me, that's when it happened. So this car leaving town at 3:45, it looks like an Elantra, could have got gas, could have stopped at that Taco Bell before they left town or somewhere to grab some grub and hit the road. And and I think that's the car that ends up in Eugene, Oregon a few days later, wrecked on the side of the road. To me, I think that's the Elantra that they found in Oregon. But that's just my speculation.
I mean, it could be, and there's no front license. Well, the bumper was ripped off, and I don't think there was a front license plate on that car either.
Yeah, that shot is just a side shot, so it doesn't even show either plate on on either end. It's and the blurry at the video's crappy. I mean, that's
Mm,
if that's the only thing they got, I mean, it doesn't even jive with their timeline. I think that's why they're not pushing it.
yeah.
But we got another gifted membership here from Sam Panther. So thank you very much for doing that. That means that you guys will just randomly get picked by YouTube and their however they do that, and you'll get a membership to the Horns High Club. So thank you very much for that. Very good. Well, we're in an hour, 40 minutes. It's kind of flown by, Michael. It's gone very
Yeah,
well.
been great.
We still got more stuff we want to talk about. And I know we got through all the questions that I've got saved up. So I'm just going to keep firing through this stuff we were going to go over. Um, do you think that the Moscow PD was doing one side of this parallel construction and the FBI is doing the more clandestine or nefarious, if you want to call it that, operation? Do you think that's what's going on here? Moscow PD is just kind of the cover story to make everybody think they're the ones doing all this stuff, but they're really not? What do you think?
Well, the Quad Cities Task Force was in that area looking, and they work with multiple agencies. They work with numerous agencies, police agencies, and the FBI. Um, and sometimes, from what I understand, they don't tell everybody, like the patrol people, what's going on. They want to keep that under their hat. So um, I'm not sure. I mean, it's going that it's very hard to figure that out from the outside. Somebody from the inside is going to, or that it might come out in a civil trial, or Ann Taylor might find out. I mean, that's possible. Who is doing what? Um, I think we talked about both of us have law enforcement in our family, retired, and I give those people a lot of credit. They have a very hard job,
They
and
do.
they're doing it 24/7. Going. I mean, I remember my brother-in-law leaving in the middle of the night to go to work, and I was at his house with my sister. We were just talking and seeing him leave, and said, you don't know if he's ever going to come back again. That it's a possibility. He worked in a little town, but still, you just don't know.
Hmm.
They're working on everybody else is having Christmas. They're working. They're
Right.
Thanksgiving. Working. You have to shift around. So,
Yeah.
um, I'm going to do like a wait and see on, you know, uh, saying anything about the police right now.
I know.
Some
I
of it,
don't really like saying that either, but it just in this case, it's just very, very curious, and I just wonder if that's the red herring to get us talking about the silliness that the Moscow PD is doing when the real investigation is going on behind the scenes with these confidential informants in this parallel construction that we've been talking about.
well, they have to. There's only so much they can go out and do legally. I mean, this can really come back and bite them in the butt. I don't. I mean, I think they pretty much got what they called it their kitten in the ring. I think they had this investigation done, and it went south, and maybe they panicked and they pulled Brian out of nowhere. I mean, that's what it looks like right now. It doesn't look like they have a lot of information a lot of evidence on this guy, and
No.
everything they said in the beginning makes it sound like this was like um, I don't know how to a professional hit. So I mean, they to do a vandal alert and then say, "Oh, don't worry about it," like
Right.
they knew something. Like those people were, it was targeted, and they were long gone. Whoever did this was long gone.
Right.
And Steve G says, "Why did they clear all these people so fast?" Because the police knew that I believe that it was a bigger professional.
Interesting. And I wonder if there was some sort of message left behind, whether it be on the walls or a note or something that would have led them to make that statement about it being a targeted attack kind of a thing. Who knows? I mean, it's possible. I know from doing the Murder Metal Mayhem podcast all these years, a lot of the killers will leave messages behind, maybe sometimes to throw police off. It's hard to say, but it certainly makes you wonder. I saw this comment, or I wanted to throw this up on the screen, from All's Well That Ends Well. Everyone remember 3 months after his arrest, March 22nd, 2023, the defense filed Bethany has exculpatory evidence. So they've known since then. So yeah, this is not anything new. I mean, this has been, from the very beginning of this whole thing with her. It bothers me to think that a guy could be sitting in a jail cell instead of going after his PhD and doing what he planned on doing for his life, and knowing that there's somebody in Reno, Nevada hanging out, getting ready to get married, who might know something that would let him out, and it's not being told. I can't wrap my mind around it. I really can't, because I couldn't imagine being in that situation. So that's an
Well, one
interesting
thing
one.
that they don't say is what it is. I mean, it might be something um, that there was the fight at the frat. It could be something that is just a little bit of evidence that would, you know, keep him out of the mix. It might not be a total exoneration. So
That's
that could be
true.
a perception. Yeah.
That's very true. Thank you, Melissa Myers, for gifting a membership. That's awesome, to the Horns High Club. The Horns High Club is growing. That's a good thing. So that's awesome. I have a question about, and I don't know if you know much about the Dr. Moore case up in Bonners Ferry, Idaho. Do you know much about that, Michael?
I've only heard a little bit about it. I haven't been following it. I tend to stick with one case. Like, I get, if there's too many things going on,
Oh, I get it.
I find that they kind of cross wires. So I try to keep it.
Yeah. Well, through my learning of the Idaho 4 case, I stumbled upon a video. I don't even remember who it was, because there's been several that talked about this Gary Tolleson. He's the Idaho State Police detective that was on that case that framed a chiropractor, Dr. Moore, for a murder of another chiropractor. And this is we could do a whole live on this. Not going to get into the details, but some really shady stuff went down, changing timestamps on video,
Okay.
making it look like Dr. Moore's truck was at the scene when it wasn't. He had an airtight alibi, and Tolleson talked the guy out of giving him the alibi. This is all documented. There's a civil case going on right now about it. I want to know why in the hell the state of Idaho thought it was a good idea to put that guy on this case. Honestly, with that kind of jaded past. Now, I know that just because these accusations are made, this is all alleged. But I'm just saying, if you've got somebody with that kind of baggage circling around him, why would you put him as the point man? Because apparently he's the one that interviewed Dylan, Bethany. He did all this stuff. Of course, we haven't seen any video of it, so I don't know what's true and what's not. But I'm just curious why they put Gary Tolleson on this case, and Moscow PD serves up Brett Payne with 2 years of experience, who just won the Cop of the Year. I thought that was hilarious. Did you see that?
I did.
I don't know what Cop of the Year he won, like the Moscow PD, the state, federal. I don't even know what it is. This guy shouldn't be running a popsicle stand based on some of the nonsense that we've heard, but I just laughed when I saw that, that he got, Officer of the Year. And I just don't know. But these two, Tolleson and Payne, it just seems like an odd pairing up to run a case. That's why I think that case is just kind of what you see here. And Oz is behind the curtain doing that parallel construction, doing
right.
this confidential informants and all that kind of stuff. That's just kind of what I'm thinking, but I
Well,
don't know.
you also have the retirement, the one, the chief, I believe it was, and then, well, Chief Fry, he retired and then went to another agency, right?
Right.
Yeah,
That
so
was the Pullman. You talking about the Pullman chief that interviewed Brian and then went to WSU and became their chief?
I don't know if that was the Moscow chief. It wasn't it Chief Fry, Moscow?
Oh,
He went,
Chief Fry is going to retire and wants to become sheriff. But in
yeah,
Pullman, the chief of the Pullman PD, he interviewed Brian in the summer before this happened for the job there, which he
okay,
didn't get.
right,
Right after that, he retired and went over to the WSU police as their chief. And amazingly, they're the ones that found the car in the parking lot of the Steptoe Apartments there.
yeah,
Isn't that ironic? That's why I think, honestly, you were talking about they plucked Brian out of thin air. I
mhm,
think he was on the radar then because the Pullman PD knew when they interviewed him, single guy, he's from somewhere else, because they sure as hell wasn't going to pin this on any local boy, right?
right,
No, and maybe it came out in the interview that he liked to drive around at night, had insomnia, maybe. I'm sure it came out that his master's was in forensic, uh, digital cloud-based forensics.
right,
That
yeah,
PD got nailed right after all this. Multiple officers nailed for SA on with suspects, like some insane stuff. So
right,
that's why I wonder if when he started talking about his, you know, his jam was digital forensics and all that, I'm thinking a guy that knows all this is going on in his department, that's the last person he wants hanging around the PD, snooping around in everybody's business. So they sent
right,
him down the road, and then he went to Moscow and interviewed there in October, a month before this happened. Now, a lot of people think he's part of law enforcement. I mean, nothing would surprise me in this case, but I don't know if
right.
you think that that's possible that he could be somehow involved in this thing.
There was a point where he wanted to have a special meeting with the judge, and some people thought that he might have been somewhat of a confidential informant. Um, and I don't, I hadn't heard anything more of that, if that happened or not. But it, it's a possibility. It's a possibility. And he was like a patsy. You know,
Yeah,
he got involved in something, and they turned on him. Um, I just read that the defense attorney had a thing up on the net to not be a confidential informant. It's very, it's not helpful. The police will make all these promises, and you know that they're going to go right on you, and this, and he says they can't really promise these things, and then you wind up getting the bad end of the stick.
right.
And you can still get locked up for crimes that you do along the way. So, confidential informants, which they were using in Coleman, that's the other thing that that article says. They were recruiting people with low level drug uh, crimes to go after the higher level. And a lot of these were students. So your student gets, and Idaho doesn't even, from what I understand, doesn't even have medical marijuana. They're very conservative.
Right,
You
right.
know, very conservative. In Washington, you can get uh, pot legal. So
Mhm.
if they get caught with it in Idaho, they can try to flip you. You know, oh, you're gonna, you know,
Oh,
and they
for
did get
sure.
one girl. They got one girl for 21 years old. They got her on a felony selling cocaine. And
Mhm.
she was part of a sorority. So
Right.
that this is all part. This is before the
Yeah.
crime. So, that's a very dangerous business. And again, if you're young and dumb, you're like probably
Mhm.
paranoid that your parents are going to find out that you were
Oh,
using
sure.
and you believe what they tell you,
Mm-hmm.
and I think Brian, to his um, compliment, he has said nothing, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
they tell you. Basically, all the defense
Right.
attorneys tell you, do
Don't
not
tell
say
any.
anything.
Right.
And
He's
and that's
smart. He knows.
yeah, and that's been driving everybody crazy.
Right.
Why doesn't he shout from the rooftop that he's
Right.
innocent?
Right.
So
Well, we got about 5 minutes left here, so I do want to run through a couple quick things here. I want to thank you guys for joining us today. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. I know that I did. It was a
it's
lot of fun. We
fun.
were up at about 350 or so in the chat today at the peak that I saw, so that's awesome. Lots of
Oh,
great questions. I hope you guys were happy with us getting through a lot of those. Thanks to the mods of Mayhem for kicking ass once again. Thanks to my friend AR Hayes for being here with us. Go check out his channel, A Convict's Thoughts. He and I have got some projects we're doing together. So if you guys like AR and I talking, you're going to get more of that. Big thanks to you, Michael, for coming on with us today, joining the conversation. Definitely want to support your channel. So I've been throwing that banner up. It'll be in the description below. But
thank you.
thank you, Michael.
Oh,
Appreciate that.
it's been great, and it's great talking to you. There's not everybody that I can discuss these things on. It's very knowledgeable. You have a great channel, and I had a great time.
Awesome. Awesome. Don't forget to hit that like button. If you're not a subscriber, please do that before you leave. It helps the channel grow and it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. I will not be doing a live next weekend due to Memorial Day. Got some family plans, but have no fear. I'll be back June 2nd. That's a Sunday, same time, same channel. And I'm working on the guest for that one. So I'll keep you guys posted. And the last thing I want to do, that question I promised you for this giveaway, 5 copies of my audiobook, Creation of Chaos 4 short story collection from last summer. It's a good one. I do the audio. You can do it on Audible or Amazon with this link I'll send you if you win. The deadline is Wednesday at midnight. So the question to you, simple question. Tell me what Michael Addario's profession is. Tell me what Michael's profession is. We talked about it here. You can send that to this email that I'm going to throw up here on the screen. Send your answer to murdermetalmayhem at gmail. Don't put it in the comments. Don't put it in the chat. Don't email it to the main Murder Metal Mayhem page. Email it there. What is Michael's profession? And you can enter the contest. I'll have the random number generator pick 5 and you'll get a link to that audiobook if you like audiobooks. But you have to listen to me. It's like 10 hours long. So you got to listen to me drone on for 10 hours. But there's some good stories in there. I really like the collection. I redid a modern version of Frankenstein, which I did a podcast about the book on for Halloween one year, and I thought, it's a really good story, a lot more than what I thought was
Hmm.
in Frankenstein. So I thought it would be cool to modernize it. So if you like horror suspense, you'll like it. So, but very good. I think we've had a good live here. I think it was a lot of great questions. See here another super chat right at the last minute from Deborah. Thank you very much. Keep
Very good.
on bringing the info and the goods. We will appreciate that very much, Deborah, and all you guys for checking it out. We appreciate it very much. And I'll see you Sunday, June 2nd for the next live. So thank you guys.
Thank you.